Criticism of atheism is criticism of the concepts, validity, or impact of atheism, including associated political and social implications. Criticisms include arguments based on theistic positions, arguments pertaining to morality, or what are thought to be the effects of atheism on the individual, or of the assumptions, scientific or otherwise, that underpin atheism. Criticism of atheism is complicated by the fact that there exist multiple definitions and concepts of atheism, including practical atheism, theoretical atheism, negative and positive atheism, implicit and explicit atheism, and strong and weak atheism, with critics not always specifying the subset of atheism being criticized. Various agnostics and theists have criticized atheism for being an unscientific, or overly dogmatic and definitive position to hold, some with the argument that absence of evidence cannot be equated with evidence for absence. The philosopher Alvin Plantinga argues that a failure of theistic arguments might conceivably be good grounds for agnosticism, but not for atheism, and points to the observation of an apparently fine-tuned universe as more likely to be explained by theism than atheism. Oxford professor of mathematics John Lennox holds that atheism is an inferior worldview to that of theism, and attributes to C.S. Lewis the best formulation of Merton's thesis, that science sits more comfortably with theistic notions, on the basis that men became scientific in Western Europe in the 16th and 17th century, because they expected law in nature, and they expected law in nature because they believed in a lawgiver. In other words, it was belief in God that was the motor that drove modern science. The leading American geneticist Francis Collins also cites Lewis as persuasive in convincing him that theism is the more rational worldview than atheism. Other criticisms focus on perceived effects on morality and social cohesion. The Enlightenment philosopher Voltaire, a deist, imagined the implications of godlessness in a disorderly world. The father of classical liberalism, John Locke, believed that the denial of God's existence would undermine the social order and lead to chaos. Edmund Burke, a name associated with both modern conservatism and liberalism, saw religion as the basis of civil society, and wrote that man is by his constitution a religious animal, that atheism is against not only our reason, but our instincts, and that it cannot prevail long. Pope Pius VI wrote that communist atheism was aimed at upsetting the social order, and at undermining the very foundations of Christian civilization. In the 1990s, Pope John Paul II criticized the spreading practical atheism as clouding the religious and moral sense of the human heart and leading to societies which struggle to maintain harmony. Atheism is the absence of belief that any deities exist, the position that there are no deities, or the rejection of belief in the existence of deities. Agnostic atheists contend that there are insufficient grounds for strong atheism, the position that no deities exist, but at the same time, believe that there are insufficient grounds for belief in deities. Agnostics propose that every other theological position assumes too much about the concept of God, and that the question of the existence of God is meaningless. Some atheists argue that there is a lack of empirical evidence for the existence of deities. Rationales for not believing in any deity include the problem of evil, the argument from inconsistent revelations, and the argument from non-belief. Other arguments for atheism range from the philosophical to the social to the historical. In general, atheists regard the arguments for the existence of God as unconvincing or flawed. T.J. Mawson makes a case against atheism by citing some lines of evidence and reasoning such as the high level of fine-tuning whereby the life of morally sentient and significantly free creatures like humans has implications. On the maximal multiverse hypothesis, he argues that in appealing to infinite universes one is in essence explaining too much, and that it even opens up the possibility that certain features of the universe still would require explanation beyond the hypothesis itself. He also argues from induction for fine-tuning in that, If one supposed that infinite universes existed, there should be infinite ways in which observations can be wrong on only one way in which observations can be right at any point in time. For instance, that the color of gems stay the same every time we see them. In other words, if infinite universes existed, then there should be infinite changes to our observations of the universe, and in essence, be unpredictable in infinite ways. Yet this is not what occurs.